20,000 years ago, before cities, engines, or airplanes, Earth held a silence so complete it almost seems impossible today. Imagine hearing your own heartbeat louder than anything surrounding you for miles in every direction. But was there truly one place quieter than every other place on the planet? The answer would surprise even modern scientists searching Earth's last untouched wilderness. Because silence is not simply the absence of sound, it's the absence of life, movement, and even wind. To find Earth's quietest place, we must travel into a world where glaciers ruled continents and oceans stood hundreds of feet lower. Back then, North America echoed beneath mile-thick ice, while forests disappeared beneath frozen horizon. Across Eurasia, only scattered bands of humans dared survive within nature's frozen empire. Even then, complete silence remained incredibly rare, because life always leaves behind the smallest sound. But somewhere on Earth there may have been moments when absolutely nothing moved, not even the air itself. Modern scientists measure silence with sensitive instruments, but Ice Age humans relied entirely on their senses to survive. Every distant crack, whisper, or animal call could mean food or a deadly predator waiting beyond the snow. Surprisingly, the loudest sound across Frozen Valley was often something no human could ever control. After the echo faded, silence returned so completely it almost erased the memory of thunder itself. Still, scientists believe an even quieter place may have existed, hidden far from glacier, rivers, and migrating animals. If silence had an address during the Ice Age, it would have been somewhere almost no human ever reached. Many scientists believed Antarctica was already one of the quietest places on Earth, even 20,000 years ago. No villages, no birds, no forests, no flowing rivers, only endless frozen emptiness stretching for hundreds of miles. Even today, researchers describe moments there when the silence feels almost physically overwhelming. But Antarctica may not have been the quietest place after all, because one forgotten landscape was even more astonishing. The answer wasn't hidden beneath the thickest ice. It was hidden where almost nothing could survive. Scientists call these places polar deserts, where snowfall is so rare that centuries leave barely a visible trace. Without forests, insects, birds, or flowing rivers, nature itself became almost completely silent. Even the wind sometimes disappeared, leaving the landscape suspended inside a breathtaking moment of complete stillness. Imagine standing there alone until a single unexpected sound suddenly shattered the silence. The sound was not an animal, it wasn't another human. It came from the ice itself. As temperatures shifted, ancient glacier slowly expanded and contracted, releasing echoes that ruled for astonishing distances. Cold air carried low-frequency sounds further than most people would ever imagine. A single crack could travel across miles of frozen wilderness before disappearing into perfect stillness once again. But what happened next made ancient silence feel even stronger than anyone expected. As the hunter stepped deeper into canyon, something felt immediately different. Even his own footsteps sounded strangely muted. The steep canyon was blocked by powerful winds, leaving the air almost perfectly still for long stretches of time. Without moving air, sounds could not bounce and swirl the way they did across open valleys. For few unforgettable moments, the hunter experienced something modern people almost never hear: true natural silence. Then, without warning, an enormous shadow silently crossed the snow behind him. Slowly, the hunter turned around, expecting danger but finding something far more extraordinary. A lone woolly mammoth emerged through the icy mist, moving with a surprising grace that barely disturbed the silent valley. Its broad padded feet acted like natural snowshoes, softening each step across the frozen landscape. Even an animal weighing several tons could cross the valley with astonishing little noise. Perhaps the quietest place on earth wasn't empty at all. Perhaps it was simply perfectly balanced. Today, scientists can recreate ancient soundscapes without hearing a single sound from the ice age itself. Every layer of ancient soil preserves tiny clues about the world our ancestors once heard. Pollen reveals forests, dust reveals drought. Together they reveal how loud or quiet a landscape may have been. The fewer the trees, the fewer the birds, the fewer the rivers, the fewer the natural voices. Then researchers uncovered something unexpected. The quietest places weren't always the coldest. The secret wasn't temperature alone, it was how snow and air worked together like nature's own soundproof walls. Fresh snow contains millions of tiny air pockets that naturally absorb sound instead of reflecting it. Imagine walking across a landscape that quietly swallowed almost every footstep before it could echo away. In places sheltered from strong winds, silence could linger for hours without being interrupted. Still, one force could shatter that silence instantly, and it arrived from thousands of feet above. Without warning, freezing air began cascading down the mountainside faster than any human could outrun. These powerful katabatic winds could roar across the ice at astonishing speeds before disappearing as suddenly as they arrived. Minutes later, the storm was gone, leaving behind a silence that felt even deeper than before. The hunter realized something remarkable. Silence wasn't permanent. It was a rare gift between nature's powerful forces. When archaeologists uncovered another clue, hidden not in snow, but deep inside ancient caves. Deep inside ancient caves, silence became more than an absence of sound, it became an unforgettable human experience. Some caves were so quiet that even a whisper returned as dozens of delicate echoes. Researchers believe prehistoric people carefully noticed these echoes long before anyone understood the science behind them. Outside, silence protected survival. Inside these caves, sound may have inspired humanity's earliest imaginations. But the greatest clue to Earth's quietest place was not hidden underground. It was frozen inside ancient ice. Each tiny air bubble inside the ice is a perfectly sealed message from Earth's atmosphere 20,000 years ago. Those bubbles reveal colder temperatures, cleaner air, an atmosphere untouched by factories, engines, or modern civilization. With almost no human-made noise, nature controlled every sound that crossed the ancient landscapes. For prehistoric hunters, hearing a single distant sound could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Then researchers made an unexpected discovery that completely changed how they understood Ice Age silence. On certain freezing mornings, cold air settled into valleys like invisible water, creating a natural ball beneath the mountains. Instead of traveling freely, some sounds bent upward, leaving the valley floor eerily quiet. To someone standing there, the world could seem as though it had simply stopped making noise. Ironically, the quietest place wasn't defined by what you could hear, but by everything you could not. And just when scientists believed they had solved the mystery, an astonishing discovery challenged everything once again. Hidden beneath ancient glaciers, nature carved enormous chambers that almost no human was ever meant to discover. Inside, thick walls of ancient ice trapped, softened, reshaped every sound in unexpected ways. Even a quiet breath seemed to disappear into the frozen wall before returning as faint whisper. These frozen chambers remind scientists that silence is shaped not only by sound but also by the places surrounding it. But the greatest surprise wasn't hidden beneath the ice, it waited above the frozen world. Above the glaciers, the world became even emptier. Few animals climbed the high, and almost no humans ever followed. At these heights, every breath became visible, while the immense landscape seemed to swallow every remaining sound. Perhaps silence was never a single place at all. Perhaps it was a fleeting moment shared between earth and sky. The Ice Age reminds us that true silence is not empty. It's a rare condition nature creates only under extraordinary circumstances. And our search is only beginning, because the next discovery will reveal that ancient darkness was just as mysterious as ancient silence. Imagine standing completely alone, surrounded by endless snow, with no voices, no cities, and no sign of another human. For Ice Age people, silence was not unusual. It was woven into daily life from childhood. Instead of constant noise, their brain learned to notice the smallest changes in the natural world. A snapping branch, a distant echo, or even shifting snow could carry life-saving information across the landscape. Ironically, the quieter the world became, the more sensitive human hearing may have become. Modern neuroscience suggests the human brain never truly switches off. When the world grows silence, the mind begins listening to itself. In profound silence, tiny sounds inside the body suddenly become impossible to ignore. Your heartbeat, your breathing, even the faint movement of clothing can feel surprisingly loud. Researchers believe prolonged silence can sharpen awareness, but it can also awaken imagination in unexpected ways. And for ancient travelers crossing endless ice, the line between reality and perception may have felt astonishingly thin. When every distraction disappeared, early humans were left alone with something unfamiliar, their own thoughts. Long before written language, silence may have become humanity's first teacher of patience, awareness, and observations. Many archaeologists believe quiet moments help sharpen memory, making stories easier to remember and pass between generations. In a quiet world, every story carried greater weight because every listener gave it complete attention. Perhaps the quietest place on earth did not simply preserve life. Perhaps it quietly shaped the human mind itself. If you could return to that frozen valley today, the silence would almost certainly sound very different. Retreating glaciers created rivers, waterfalls, and forests, filling once silent valley with entirely new voices. New species arrived, birds returned, insects emerged. The world's natural soundtrack became richer than ever before. Then humans transformed the soundscape again, adding wheels, engines, machines, and cities to Earth's ancient chorus. Today, finding true silence is no longer just difficult. In many places, it has become almost impossible. Even in Earth's most remote wilderness, complete silence rarely lasts for more than a few precious moments. A single bird call, a distant avalanche, or the whisper of wind reminds us that nature is always speaking. Perhaps our ancestors never searched for perfect silence. Perhaps they simply learned to understand every sound around them. Listening became a survival skill, a source of knowledge, and perhaps even humanity's earliest form of mindfulness. And maybe the quietest place on earth was never hidden on a map, but hidden inside the way ancient humans experienced the world. Today, our ears process thousands of sounds every hour. Ancient humans often experience only a handful. Without engines or electronics, even a raven's wings could become a loudest sound for miles. Silence was not frightening because it was empty. It was powerful because every sound suddenly mattered. Every unexpected sound forced an instant decision. Ignore it, investigate it, or prepare to survive. Perhaps that's why true silence feels so unfamiliar today, because our brains evolved expecting it. Scientists studying remote wilderness discovered that even the quietest places still pulses with subtle nature rhythms. Snow settled softly, glaciers shifted almost invisibly, and distant rivers carved their own way through frozen valleys. Absolute silence may never have existed. Instead, nature whispered in ways our ancestors understood instinctively. Every breeze carried information about weather, wildlife, and the unseen world beyond the next ridge. The quietest place on earth was not lifeless, it was alive with signals only patient listeners could recognize. Ironically, the further humans spread across the planet, the rarer these untouched soundscapes became. Generation after generation, forests echoed with more voices, rivers welcomed more travelers, and silence slowly retreated. Still, in a handful of remote places, echoes of that ancient quiet still survive today. Standing there, you might finally understand what an ice age traveler once experienced 20,000 years ago. Because sometimes the greatest discovery is not finding a forgotten place, it's remembering how to truly listen. If silence shaped our ancestors, could rediscovering it still change the way we experience the modern world? Researchers now study natural quiet not only to understand the past but to protect the future. Protecting quiet landscapes also protects wildlife that depends on hearing to survive and communicate. The same silence that once guided ancient hunters still helps countless animals navigate the wild today. Perhaps the quietest place on earth was never truly lost. We simply stopped paying attention to it. To test this idea, imagine removing every road, every engine, and every distant human sound from the horizon. The silence would not arrive instantly. It would emerge layer by layer as noise slowly vanished. First, the loud sounds disappear, then subtle ones became surprisingly vivid and important. Eventually, your attention shifts away from the world around you and toward the act of listening itself. And the realization may be the closest we can come to experience the quietest place on earth. 20,000 years have passed, yet mountains continue keeping the same patient silence. The glaciers have retreated, countless species have changed, but Earth's oldest landscapes still remember their ancient rhythm. What changed most was not the planet itself, it was the amount of noise we brought into it. Still, every winter storm, every frozen valley, and every remote mountain still offers a glimpse of that forgotten world. Maybe the quietest place on earth has never disappeared. Maybe it's simply waiting for someone willing to stop and truly listen. But one final question remains. Was the quietest place actually on land or somewhere no human had ever reached? Far from every campfire, every migration route, and every hunting trail, vast frozen deserts remained almost completely undisturbed there. Even the sound of your own footstep might have echoed further than another living voice. Perhaps no single place deserved the title. Silence existed wherever nature remained untouched long enough to breathe. And maybe that's the greatest lesson left behind by the Ice Age, that silence was never empty, it was alive. Scientists may never pinpoint one exact location, but they continue uncovering remarkable clues buried beneath ice and stone. Each frozen layer preserves another chapter of Earth's climate, atmosphere, and the soundscape our ancestors once knew. The evidence reminds us that Earth once breathed through glacier, wind, forest, and open skies instead of machines. Perhaps preserving quiet places is one of the simplest ways to preserve our connection with the distant human past. Because somewhere between the wind and mountains and the silence, the oldest part of being human still remains. And in that silence, the boundary between past and present begins to disappear. Every footstep we take on wild ground echoes through a history far older than memories. The same wind that once moved across mammoth plains still moves across them today. If you listen closely, you may hear not absence, but presence shaped by time itself. And somewhere beneath all modern noises, that ancient quiet still waits patiently, not as emptiness, but as living system the earth never forget. This is why silence never truly belongs to past. It continues to exist wherever life slows down enough to notice it. And maybe, just maybe, we have been searching for it in the wrong direction all along. Because the quietest place on earth was never a place at all. It was a way of being present in the world. In every era, silence has always been shaped by what humans choose to build or choose to live untouched. Even the Ice Age was not silent everywhere, but its noise was rare, distant, and meaningful. But in nature, silence is never static. It breathes, shifts, and evolves with every passing moment. The quietest place on earth may simply be where life has not yet been overwhelmed by people's presence. And still, even in modern world, fragments of that ancient quiet still survive in hidden corners of planets. Listening to those places may be the closest we can come to hearing the earth before history began. Because silence is not the absence of life, it is the presence of everything we have learned to ignore. And somewhere deep in that awareness lies the same mind that once stood still in the Ice Age wind. So the question is not where the quietest place was, but whether we are still capable of hearing it today. Because silence was never gone, it only changed shape as the world became louder. In the Ice Age, even distance itself acted like a shield, keeping sound from traveling too far. Today, even the quietest wilderness carries traces of aircraft, cities, and distant machines. But in ancient times, sound traveled differently, so every noise had a beginning, a middle, and a clear end. That natural boundary between sounds may have helped ancient humans focus more deeply on their environment. In a world without constant background noise, attention itself became a survival tool. Today, our attention is pulled in every direction, leaving little space for the kind of awareness they once depended on. And still, when everything goes quiet, something ancient inside us begins to reawaken, not as memory, but as instinct. And maybe the quietest place on earth was never about where you stood, but how deeply you were willing to listen. When modern sound disappears, the world does not become empty, it becomes honest. Even the smallest natural sound begins to feel enormous when nothing competes with them. This is why ancient humans did not fear silence. They used it as a tool for awareness. Modern life often replaces awareness with constant stimulation, leaving little room for quiet observation. But nature has never stopped offering us places where silence still feels complete. In those places, time itself seems to slow down enough for us to notice its weight. And perhaps that is the closest we will ever come to stepping back into Ice Age's world. Because the Ice Age never truly ended, it simply moved into memories. And memory becomes powerful only when we allow ourselves to feel what it once meant. So the quietest place on earth was never lost. It was simply waiting for us to return our attention to it. And when we listen without distraction, even modern earth beginning to sound ancient again. Every river, every wind current, every frozen surface still carries echoes of that prehistoric silence. Even the quietest sound today is shaped by a landscape that once knew only wind and ice. What we call silence is often just a different arrangement of the same natural forces, and those forces have not changed their language in tens of thousands of years. Only our awareness to them has changed. The quietest place on earth is therefore not hidden. It is simply overlooked because it exists wherever life has not still been interrupted long enough to forget its own rhythm. And in that rhythm, ancient humans once learned how to survive and how to listen. And maybe the final truth is this: silence was never the absence of sound, but the presence of everything that matters. In that stillness, even the idea of time began to feel like something breathing rather than something passing. Every ancient landscape carries its own memory of silence, attached into stone and ice, and humans, for a brief moment in history, learned to live inside that silence instead of resisting it. Modern life rarely gives us that same uninterrupted space to simply exist, but silence has a way of returning whenever the world pauses long enough to let it in. In those moments, we are not separated from ancient humans. We are simply standing where they were once, and every silence we experience today is a fragment of that same word counting to speak. We just rarely notice it because we are taught to fill every quiet space. But the earth never stopped offering us places where nothing interrupts the wind. And maybe that is where the quietest place on this earth still exists, waiting unchanged, not in a hidden valley, not in forgotten cave, but inside the way we choose to hear the world. Because silence is not something we enter, it is something we uncover beneath everything else. And beneath all sound, all moment, all memories, the earth continues its quiet conversation with itself. We are not outside that conversation, we are part of it, whether we notice or not. The Ice Age did not end with a sound, it faded slowly like breath leaving cold air. And what remained was not emptiness, but a space for everything that would come after. Today we call it wilderness, but to Earth it has always simply been home. And somewhere within that home, the quietest place on earth is still breathing. If you ever find that place, don't speak first. Just listen.